Good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday, June 10th of 2026, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Superpower Logic podcast. I'm your host, Richard Swank, along with my co-host, Kelly Jordan, and we are here to discuss a weekly podcast to discuss international and domestic events that affect our status as a superpower in the world. Going to be serious at times, lighthearted at times, always going to be fun. Try to keep it as nonpartisan as possible. We're two Americans who believe in America first and always are rooting for success for our country. We would normally like to keep this lighthearted to start the show. It's, with the events going on in Iran and what has taken place over the last 48 hours with the shoot down of our U.S. Army Apache helicopter and the beginning of retaliatory airstrikes against Iran, we felt best that we need to dig into that. So
I'll just say hi quick. But Richard, I'm glad that we're discussing Iran, especially this last 24, 48 hours of events, because at the end of the day, if we have troops on men shot down, we need to protect them. We always need to be protecting our troops, especially our forward troops, in my opinion, because they provide the safety and security that not only America benefits, but the world benefits from.
100%. I was a little disappointed with the president's initial statements regarding the shoot down of the helicopter and his lack of enthusiasm and some type of retaliation. This goes to force protection and defending our service members who are forward deployed. Longstanding tradition that we do those things to protect them, and
To me,
things are being escalated as we speak right now.
yeah, one thing I will say that seems to be a perpetual disappointment more so recently is politicians, again, doesn't matter both sides. The military should never be political, right? Our sailors, our soldiers, our airmen, we should never play games, political games with their lives. And I just feel like over the last 10 years now, full confession, I've never served, but to me, we should be doing everything we need to support the brave Americans that put their lives on the line. So I'm going to concur with your opinion a bit. Just the world should know you cannot mess with an American and and anyone willing to defend America.
And what's going on right now, obviously the background with Iran is complex. It goes back to 1979. I think a fact that is lost on a fairly large percentage of Americans, the mindset of younger Americans that happened before me. The before me mindset is a pet peeve of mine. And quite frankly, this is a problem that I felt should have been dealt with a long, long, long time ago. I don't think that this has been a perfect operation by any means, but we have degraded Iran and their capabilities up to this point. How much is debatable and is probably something that is known to those that need to know it and has not really been leaked. But 3 4 years ago, the idea of doing what we've been doing to Iran and what Israel's been doing to Iran over essentially the last year, starting with Operation Midnight Hammer, was something that I would have never thought possible with such a large country as Iran and getting into the mix as we have. I did not see that as a legitimate option even 3 years ago. So I think it has been successful to some extent. Again, history will judge how successful it will ultimately have been, but I do believe more than anything else that we cannot negotiate with this regime.
Yeah, we haven't negotiated with terrorists. That's been our line for decades, and that's for a reason. And Richard, your point about this younger generation, I think is so important. But I actually think this younger generation starts a lot older than a lot of people are willing to admit, frankly. I'm in my late 30s right now. I can tell you for certain that many of my peers have little to no appreciation or understanding of of how safe we are here in America. Now, I remember September 11th. For me, that was a life-defining moment. I was a s in high school, just early high school, but that was a life-defining moment for me, but I was the exception. Most of my peers didn't seem to take issue. Now, I'm not s I know Iran wasn't responsible for September 11th, but my point being here is Iran, and I wanna be very clear, It was not it was not Iran that was responsible for
Right.
September 11th. My point, though, is that Iran has been a pain in our butts since 1979. Largely, there is a whole generations of Americans here that have little to no understanding of that, or even September 11th, like that, where they hit us on our home soil. And I think it's really easy to feel safe when you are so far away from danger. And obviously, America got lucky geographically, just we got two huge oceans somewhat protecting us. But those that are speaking to these issues don't have a full understanding of the severity and seriousness of them and the true threat that Iran poses to us and our way of life because it's not just Iran. There's a bunch of proxy networks that they fund. Nobody anybody that would still look at us today and deny that Iran was allowing infiltrating in Venezuela, whether it be, it was direct IRGC members, weapons, Venezuela selling oil, the Chinese, the Russians, they were all in our backyard. So I give it to President Trump that he's willing to take a stand and do the hard thing. I think he was hoping Iran would be as easy as Venezuela. Turns out it wasn't. If we're going to be frank, right? Turns out it wasn't. And Iran finally played their ultimate card, the Strait of Hormuz, closing it. But they played it now and it's gone. It's done. And here's the thing about world economics and global commodities like oil. If they're disrupted, the world will work. All the money in the world will work to either removing that disruption or finding alternative options, which we are already seeing in the Strait. So to that point, I think we should, if we get a little more into this operation, I just want folks to kind of keep all that in mind. That while this is all going on, many of the people speaking to it at home aren't very educated in the impacts of it or our existing relationship and the true threat, the true nature of the threat. And that while we work, there are many, it's funny, money is quite the incentive. Right. And they're working to find alternative oils like oil, whether it be through pipelines like through the Yambu in Saudi Arabia, or the United States producing more. Canada's stepping up. Venezuela, we already know we're producing more. And countries, island nations like, oh, I don't know, the UK that have chosen to only keep a 45 to 90-day supply of jet fuel, but have the whole North Sea available to them for drilling. Hopefully they get on board soon too.
Yeah, I guess we did kind of hit the geographic lottery, didn't we, when it
We
comes to the
we
Atlantic and the Pacific and Canada and Mexico
definitely a lot of natural resources.
and all the natural resources. And yeah, I really find it interesting the workarounds that have already begun with pipelines and if anybody has the resources to make the Strait of Hormuz irrelevant, it is the Gulf Coast countries. They have the money and the wherewithal
And
to
the
do
need
and the
and
need
yeah.
to do whatever they want, and as long as they're willing to cooperate with each other, they can build pipelines, use existing pipelines, and at some point, eventually make the Strait of Hormuz somewhat irrelevant.
Yeah. And an important distinction between the Gulf Wars of the 80s. The United States is both the largest producer and exporter of oil in the world. And natural gas. We live in that is a completely different reality than the Gulf Wars of the 80s.
So how do you see this coming to a resolution? I'm firmly on board that we will not negotiate in a meaningful way with Iran. Any type of negotiated settlement won't be worth the piece of paper it's printed on. I'm very much of the belief that we will hurt Iran, but at the end of the day, the IRGC will still be in charge, which I know was not a stated goal at the beginning of the war. They will be a significantly weakened regime moving forward. What I hope happens is that we cut off their ability to enjoy revenue from energy and take out infrastructure to really bring the war to a conclusion, but also make Iran feel the pain for what they've inflicted on the region. And ultimately, I think if you choke them from their sources of revenue, the regime eventually will crumble. Now
Yeah.
that might take a while, but and there's already plenty of signs right now, just with the effects of the blockade and how that's impacting the IRGC and regime leadership currently.
Yeah, I think, obviously, we talked about our military, and Richard is gonna go into more detail about the latest operations and the military aspect, but one of the other underappreciated tools, weapons of war that we have is not actually of the Department of War or Defense, whatever you wanna call it. His name is Scott Bessent, and he runs the Treasury, and this man understands, like very few others on the planet, how to destroy a country using its own economic system. I mean, they call him the man. He broke the Bank of England, and he did. And Besant understands the nature of the cryptocurrencies and all the illegal ways that the IRGC was receiving their funding and selling their oil for on the black market. And he's been, I think they deployed him to, honestly, they deployed him a little late in the game. Right? Or in my opinion, or it could be that he was truly up against a brick wall. I know, for example, he had been begging the UK for months to, well, just so we're clear, in the United Kingdom, the IRGC is not considered a terrorist. The UK still does legitimate. They have not considered a terrorist organization because they believe that they need to communicate with them in order to keep the dialogue open. I'd argue that's because they benefit from the offshore. The UK benefits greatly from the offshore unrestricted financial markets that the IRGC have been using, like this particular company Tether, which Scott Bessent was saying for months to the UK. The IRGC is laundering, they're getting oil revenue through a company registered in the United Kingdom. It turned out to be two companies. And it took them literally until, I mean, it was after war, we were actively at war with them, that the UK finally sanctioned this company and shut them down, and they were able to trace multiple billions of dollars through here. So, it's possible that we maybe deployed Besson a little too late, and he's just up against a headwind that we can't really fully appreciate. But, I was seeing some reporting last week that Iran's oil revenues are down 94% from April. This is so in May, they were down 94%. April. So they went from billions of dollars to 100 million or less. That is a blockade that is working. Maybe we just did it a little too late. I don't know. But I would like to hear more about like the military aspect as well.
Well, I think the blockade, again, there's going to be so much time to Monday morning quarterback the military operations and how things played out. The blockade has been very successful in starving the regime of oil revenue. Has the blockade been perfect? No, it has not. But it's certainly accomplished and is accomplishing what it was set out to do. And it would seem, while it's difficult because we do not have a 1980s 600 ship navy, while it will be difficult to do this blockade for a significant amount of time, like for example, say through the end of the year, it is possible. It's certainly within the means of our navy. That being said, it takes away assets, warships from other parts of the world, and handcuffs the administration in particularly the Pacific region, which has been the Indo-PACOM commander testified before the Senate, I believe it was in April, about the importance of winning the war in Iran and bringing it to a conclusion so that assets can be ready for the Western Pacific and the deterrence mission, the interdiction mission, and ultimately, possibly defending Taiwan if that's required.
The rising threat of China and
Yeah, and we just can't be handcuffed with two aircraft carriers and an amphibious readiness group and all the surface warships in the region right now as is. That we can't maintain this indefinitely.
And sorry to jump in here, but I just want to make this point because you've made it before phenomenally. Anyone that is surprised by this is surprised only because they've chosen not to do their research. This administration is explicitly laid this out in their national security and defense strategies. Explicitly. Couldn't be clearer. And this is for anybody that might say, oh, well, it's Trump. No, this was started during the Biden administration. This recognition that China is the threat and we need to free up. Because remember, the generals don't largely change by new president, right? yeah, at maybe at cabinet levels they do, but not the guys running it day to day, right? Or largely the ones directing troops and military priorities. And correct me if I'm wrong there, but I our military has recognized the threat of China for multiple administrations. So, I just really one, the Trump administration has made this explicitly clear. You read their national security, their national defense, their State Department, their Treasury, at their economic department. This has all been perfectly laid out. This should not be a surprise to anyone.
Yeah, and I really think we just have to figure out what, and it might have been done already. We need to figure out what post-war Iran is going to look like, and what we're willing to tolerate. Obviously, we've stated that regime change is not a one of the four explicit goals of this operation. I certainly think that they would be more than happy if the regime was overthrown. Can't imagine anything in its place that would be worse than what is currently running the country.
But
But
it's not a hill we'll die on, and I think that's important.
right. It's not a hill we're gonna die on. It needs to happen organically. We have proven time after time that we are bad at building nations. We're really good at breaking them. We're really bad at putting the Legos back together, if you will. So, I think best case scenario is a weakened Iran with a even more weakened IRGC in charge, and what we're going to allow that regime to have in place to operate and run that country. And if we leave in place the ability to extract oil from the ground, refine it, their infrastructure, their power plants, their nuclear plants, their logistics infrastructure of the nation. If we leave all that in place, I think we're making a big mistake, and we'll get back to the common phrase that's been used repeatedly, which is mowing the lawn.
Yeah, and I think it's important to recognize too, if China is a major beneficiary of an Iran that is sanctioned, is stuck with because China is the number one beneficiary of sanctioned Iranian oil. China doesn't really care it's sanctioned. China actually loves it because China's getting deeply discounted oil, right?
How discounted is it?
I mean, be up to I can't give you an exact number. I've seen estimates up to 50% off in some cases or less. There are different deals made. It also the level that we're sanctioned and our focus. So we weren't really enforcing the sanctions that much under the Biden administration. So there wasn't much to evade, right? Like they didn't have to hide much. So you're not gonna get as large of a discount. But when we're truly policing it, it sells for a deep discount because it's the ports themselves too. We have no authority in a Chinese port, but let's say this is a vessel that leaves Iran, and does a ship-to-ship transfer and then it needs to stop in a European port, right? To fuel up, change crew, get food, whatnot. They would be like to enter a European port, it's the threat of the secondary sanctions that really motivates these guys. Because if the US finds out that, let's say, a European port accepted a ship with sanctioned Iranian oil, that port faces secondary sanctions, which would essentially shut them down. So it's never really it's second party, third party actors that end up ultimately enforcing this. And because most of these European ports would just say, nope, nope, you don't have a clean log of where this came from, or you're not insured by a Western company, or you just like, we know you're sketchy. We won't risk it because we can't risk the United States sanctioning us, which essentially shuts these ports down. So it's never really they've been very creative about how to do it. It's often second and third party actors that have to enforce it. So the price depends significantly on the level of enforcement that the US is pursuing. Obviously, these ports, if they would never accept anything that could result in some sort of military intervention, right? They're going to be really diligent about financial sanctions, but if it would come to any sort of military inventions, it would just be a hard no.
So, with that in mind, one thing that really, since this has all started, really since Trump became president, when he made his trip shortly after taking office to the Middle East, he went to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates and Qatar, and this grand vision that MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, has for the region, which is technology, crypto, financial, entertainment, soccer, Formula One, the list goes on and on. Basically, that he wants to have generate wealth from something other than energy and use the revenue and profits that the energy generates to invest in other sectors. And I'm of the belief that that investment would never be successful as long as Iran exists in the state that it currently is. And it certainly can't exist if Iran has nuclear weapons. And that's why I really believe that while the United States and Israel, for the most part, are executing the operations over and around Iran, that the Gulf Coast states, even if they weren't being attacked, they would have been they were very, very supportive of this operation. They need to enable the environment for their economic vision of the future. And Iran in its current state, even Iran in its current state post-war, the IRGC being in charge with a weakened economy and lack of oil revenue, it's still not ideal
No.
for MBS's vision of the Middle East in the future. And that's why I think and Middle Easterners, Arab Muslims play the long game. They're very transactional and
Aligned economic interests, right?
and so if it takes 4, 5, 6 years for the Iranian regime to collapse under the weight of what has taken place during these military operations, when this conflict ends, I believe MBS and other Gulf Coast countries' leadership are more than willing to wait that out because it's going to take a while to build up what is necessary for these sectors that they're interested in becoming leaders in and attracting those businesses.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the other thing too is MBS is patient. MBS has some unique problems there. He's got almost 40% of his population under the age of 24. That, I mean, and if you go up to like under 30, I think under 30 or 35, it might be 60, 70. Like he has a significant youth population that needs job. They need things to do. They need jobs because you have this generation of oil money came up, had a ton of children, right? And Saudi specifically had, they've provided all of the Saudi citizens wisely provided all the Saudi citizens with some of the share and the economic benefit of the oil money. So I think MBS is thinking so far in the future, people don't even see that he's in the future. I think he's done a phenomenal job. One country that's even less patient than Saudi because and we have to recognize Saudi faces significant modernization challenges that probably more than any other country in the Middle East. I mean, they had extremists policing, what modesty police only,
Oh
I
yeah.
think, like less than 10 years, 15 years ago. So they've come so far. So I hands down to MBS. But one country that didn't have as far to come, but is a leader, which is helping MBS as well, is the UAE. United Arab Emirates looked and they said, if we want Dubai to be a place where people are going to put their money, where we're going to get foreigners to come in and invest billions and billions of dollars and potentially their life savings, right? Like core of their financial assets. We cannot be a place that is being hit by terrorists. Right? Like we can't have Iran over here destabilizing us because what is the biggest threat to Western money would be terrorism, right? Nobody's going to send their billions and billions of dollars to invest in hard assets in the Middle East if there's not fundamental stability and safety. The UAE, the foreign minister said in 2017, he warned Europe. He said, if you don't address Islamic extremism, you are going to pay. And he said, you're going to mock me. And he had a translator going. He specifically changed his to English
Yeah, he
and
spoke in English.
spoke in English. And he said, I am speaking in English because I want there to be zero confusion about what I'm about to tell you. But he said, you do not understand Islamic Islamic extremism and the Islamic terrorism the way we do. Okay. He said it is going to destroy Europe. If you don't stop it, it will destroy you. So this was in 2017. Fast forward to 2026, the UAE actually outlaws their students from going to get, I don't know if it's outlaws or prevented them from going on the government fund. Either way, the government said we are no longer going to allow UAE citizens to go get a degree in the UK, a college degree in the UK, because they are coming back radicalized. I mean, if that doesn't wake you up, right? So the UAE has been hands down a leader. The UAE also left OPEC and OPEC Plus earlier this year. They had excessive production, but when the UAE did that, made that announcement like a week after the U.S. Treasury, not Federal Reserve. This is important, and I'll explain in a minute. Announced an ongoing credit a swap line with the UAE. Basically, we said historically that had been done by the Treasury I'm sorry, it had been done by the Fed with the understanding of the Fed is apolitical. It's neutral. It's just about monetary policy. Things are changing a little bit under this administration, and rightfully so, because again, Scott Bessent understands that a country's money is one of the best tools or weapons, incentives, whatever you want to call it, to persuade the world to go along with it. So Scott Bessent said, yes, here you go. Permanent swap line with the UAE. He also just created a dollar hotspot, a 24-hour, now 24 hours a day, any country can get dollars from a certified official, swap. And swap lines are not loans. They are trading one asset for another. The US always makes money off of our swap lines because they pay us interest, but we get their hard asset and we pre-negotiate the return rate. So if the value of their currency goes down, we're not going to lose money. So that's pre-negotiated, but you better believe that that swap came along with some conditions. Also announced was that they were working with Israel to expand the Iron Dome. And I just want to bring this final point back in the shipping industry. The best place to be if you were a ship, or still are, because they're still stuck there in the Gulf, there is off the coast of the UAE, because the UAE is providing the best defense, proactive, any drones coming in, missiles, whatever, to any ships that are anchored while the strait has been restricted. It's every ship goes to the UAE because they've had the most forward protection. So I don't think, to your point, I think this is all very exciting because yes, Saudi is doing things no one could imagine Saudi would do 10, 15, 20 years ago, but the UAE is doing it too. I think Saudi's also looking and saying, well, we can't really be left behind, right? Because the UAE is leading the charge.
Yeah, and to that point, I guess, what do you think the future of OPEC is?
Ooh, that's $1 million question there, Richard.
I feel like it's something our corporate media, the mainstream media, kind of does a disservice to the nation. Well, it doesn't kind of, it does, in my opinion. But OPEC was such a player for such a long time, and for the UAE to rather unceremoniously leave OPEC.
Yeah, they had almost 2 million barrels of excess production that they could be producing that they weren't. UAE was taking the biggest hit under Saudi. And I think it's like you've got a power and then you got a rising power, right? And I think because that announcement was made. They announced the swap line. We now know that they've been working with Israel and they normalized relations. I think you have to go back to October 7th. We have to remember that Saudi was about to normalize relations with Israel. And in my mind, I look at October 7th as a way to stop that, right? If there's that would be like Iran's worst case scenario, right?
Yeah.
And that was about to happen. And suddenly Hamas, I mean, if you Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, Iran has just wreaked havoc on that whole area for so long. And they've gotten away with it for so long that I think the world is in a little bit of shock, including Iran. Suddenly, somebody's replying. When I say replying, my God, I sound like social media, like I'm going to reply back to you. But I think like such an important point is the IRGC, the way they set their structure up, this mosaic security and framework, they are not even in control of all of their regions and provinces because they've got what is it 31? I can't remember the exact number. It's about 30 different states. And they said, we don't ever, just because Tehran's, because again, they shut off comms completely, right? No internet, no nothing. So one part of the country can't communicate with the other. And that's to prevent their citizens from either publishing the truth or connecting externally, create an uprising because they have a whole internal force dedicated just to suppressing their own people. This is an IRGC. It's, under the IRGC. I think it's the Basij. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, but
Yes.
yeah, these are your neighbors. Like these are guys with crazy machine guns, sometimes anti-aircraft machine guns that they just set on the top of Jeeps and drive down the road. So if a country or if a it's not a country because it's not Iran, because Iran does have a parliamentary representative government, and they did before IRGC took over. They just have no authority or no power now. So there is a framework of reasonable government there, but it's what do we do with the IRGC? Because any organization that committed to suppressing the opinions of its own people, I mean, what can one do with them, right?
Well, I think that you have to look at the IRGC as I kind of look at them, they have influence. They
Very
have, yeah. Uh, and again, it's important to take out the military to reduce Iran's ability to inflict damage on the region, whether through drones, ballistic missiles. But you're never going to, short of a full occupation of the country, which I don't believe is on the table, you're never going to reduce that capability. You're never going to get all the missiles, all the drones. But one thing that I think is incredibly effective, and it's part of, the old dime principle, diplomatic, information, military, and economic, utilizing all those four things in foreign policy. And if you starve the IRGC of money, whether through the blockade, through the financial things that the United States has been doing, eventually that's going to work. What really is a challenge in that regard is America's patience or lack thereof. And that, it's a shame that the administration didn't do a better job of framing this conflict. This didn't happen overnight. We built up forces over the course of several months in the region. We were obviously coordinating with Israel. I believe that when Epic Fury was kicked off, there was an opportunity to take out leadership and took advantage of that. We might have started. It may not have been the perfect time, but to take out so much senior leadership so quickly probably was a or definitely was a good thing. But it may not have been the best as far as timing. So I don't believe the administration cares too much about the midterms. I think if you really cared about the midterms, you wouldn't have undertaken this. You would have done what every other president
yeah.
would have done in the past. So
Well, you
again,
can't you can't if you're so concerned, yeah, you can't and it's America's defense. Can you be worried about the midterms, right? Can you do that? Sorry.
I think that American presidents have been ducking this problem for almost 50 years, and I give the president great credit for finally taking it on. I hope it's successful. It was never going to be an easy solution, that's for sure.
There was never. So, Richard, we've had some news over the last 24 to 48 hours regarding Iran. What would you make of that?
Well, I mean, militarily speaking, we've attacked some coastal targets, some radars and missile sites, and Bandar Abbas, and definitely some retaliatory strikes. After shooting down our Apache helicopter. And there are significant strikes going on as we do this podcast here on Wednesday, June 10th. And, the ceasefire is a double edged sword. It gives the United States and Israel an opportunity to evaluate what's worked and what hasn't, conduct significant ISR intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance over Iran, and adjust target strike lists. Also gives Iran the opportunity to dig things out that have been buried, move assets, potentially bring some assets in, and also evaluate their tactics, techniques, and procedures. What has worked, what has not. again, when you're fighting a war, the enemy has a vote, and Iran is savvy. They don't have an air force. They don't have a navy. Their primary means of exercising any kinetic action are their drones and their ballistic missiles. One thing that is of note, though, is just in the last couple of days, when Iran has fired ballistic missiles, they've fired salvos of less, somewhere between like two, three, four, five. Not a significant amount. Nothing that
They
would.
hitting targets frequently, or do we not even well, we don't know what their
Not
targets
to my knowledge, no, nothing that's been reported. Again, the Theater High Altitude Air Defense System, the Patriot air defense system, the Iron Dome, everything that's in place. A few ballistic missiles. Iron Dome is not for ballistic missiles, but what's in place. A few ballistic missiles is not going to overwhelm those defenses, and so again, Iran is degraded significantly.
Yeah. And
How
even though
many of their Go ahead.
even their so what their biggest threat has been these fast boats, this fast navy. These are boats or unmanned, basically drones can go on water too, right? There's unmanned
Sure.
water
They're
vehicles. Yeah.
they're high-speed boats with small mines, and it's not determined how many mines they've actually laid.
No, but even their boats that to respond to it, like that lay their that deliver their target, they can't remotely launch those. Like, we have completely unmanned underwater vehicles that never come up to the surface, that actually come in, stuck to the bottom of one of our ships that no enemy will ever even see, right? And I think what's ironic is the president just announced today, he said, "Well, here's how we know Iran isn't doing that well and doesn't control the strait, because just the other night, we guided 22 ships through," right?
Yeah,
Like,
the the Iranian the idea that Iran has controlled the Strait of Hormuz is just
the people
eh
that say that clearly don't have a geographic understanding of the Strait of Hormuz and geographically how it works. One of my favorites has been the people saying, "No, no ships have gotten through because the only way you can get through is up now right at the top close to Iran." And I was like, "Yeah, except for the channel right off of Oman." Like, that's naturally the deepest part, and they just like, it's irrefutable proof traffic has been getting through. It's one thing that in particular has really irritated me.
yeah, and again, if you don't have a Navy or an Air Force, it's really hard to control, sea lanes,
Yeah.
and particularly when you're going up against the United States Navy,
Especially
and
when you need any unmanned drones you have need to be launched from something on the water.
yeah,
People really forget too, an oil tanker. These things are designed. If anyone remembers any environmental disaster, right? These things are now, and the cost. I mean, the billions and billions and billions of dollars of one of these things running aground and leaking oil. They are triple, double hulled. You can shoot a machine gun at them all day and nothing will happen. And these things move at that point in the strait when they're that far out in the Gulf. They might be moving at 18 to 20 knots, and knots, so that means miles per hour, you're going even faster. Iran doesn't really have much of the technology to go at, like, their ballistic missiles can't fire at moving targets at that speed
no.
and at that force, so that's not even a threat. And then to launch any of their drones, unmanned or manned, they have to be physically on the water chasing them. Again, not easy. You can stick anything on the side of these legitimate oil tankers, it could blow up and you're still nothing's gonna happen. I think people forget that they've actually used oil tankers in the past to clear mines. They lead the way, military ships follow behind them, right? And they let these tankers clear the mines, and they'll blow up, and the parade will just go on. So,
Yeah, it's again, Iran's ability to exercise control over, sea lanes is greatly exaggerated. A bunch of people in speedboats with small mines is not going to. What shut down the Strait of Hormuz was maritime insurance and shipping companies unwillingness to transit the strait, and that's fine. That's their prerogative.
And I think an important point on these shipping companies, rarely do shipping companies own only 1 or 2 ships. I mean, most of these companies own fleets, 50 plus or more. And the rates that they were collecting while the strait was closed on any product, it didn't matter, were 3 to 4 to 5x. So let's say you own 50 ships, right? Even if 4 of them are stuck in the strait, but your other, 46 are collecting 3, 4, 5x rates, per trip, you're happy to leave it closed. As a ship owner, you're in absolutely no hurry to open it because you're now making quadruple on every other route. Right, every other charter, you're making, even if we call it only 3 times, right? Which is crazy, to be honest. Even if you're only making 3x, 46 times 3x is a whole lot more than 50 times nothing, right? So it's something that's not discussed, but these shipping companies, these owners, they don't have a lot of incentive to open that strait either.
So riddle me this, Batman. I'm curious why I'm looking right now. WTI crude 92 and change. Brent crude is at $93.10.
They're close.
What's that? Yeah, I'm just curious. Oil prices, they're a little high, but they seem to be they certainly never got to the $200 a barrel that so many people predicted when the conflict started. I'm curious, what is it doesn't seem to me to be a very linear connection between the Strait of Hormuz and the difficulty in transiting it and the price of, a- at least in my neck of the of America, gas prices are coming down.
Yeah. Oh, mine are coming down as well. Here in New York, we're not known for cheap gas prices. Mine are coming down. But so the underlying fundamentals of the oil market before we went into this with Iran, nobody wanted to get caught long oil because obviously President Trump got it to office and we've just been producing so much. Reopened markets like Venezuela, just the American markets are producing like crazy. And natural gas is also a byproduct, right? We've been sending so much natural gas to Europe. Plus, everyone talks about how green China is. China has a whole coal to chemicals process. So China is now making synthetic fuels out of coal, right? But there has never been a larger supply of oil and oil related products. But to all the people arguing China's going green, I beg you to look into this whole coal to chemicals pipeline because it is about the least green process in the world. And China continues to add not just more coal to chemical facilities, but they continue to open up more coal plants every year. Like they're still increasing their coal production. So I beg anybody that says China's gone green to look into that because it actually fundamentally changed my view on China. And then I dug a lot more into their green policy, and I was like, wow, this is not at all what I was led to believe. But oil prices, I truly believe, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, Richard, but gas stations collude, right? We always see gas spike up so fast when oil even threatens to go up, but we never see it come back down that fast. And I know there was actually a couple gas stations sued by me in this area. I don't think I might be one of like 5 people that know this happened around me, but even the editors, they collude and they say, like, here we are. We're in this. And I'll just for comparison, if I went to the 2 gas stations by my house right here, Bushnell's Basin, it's this cute little hamlet along the Erie Canal, and you got fancy ice cream shops and coffee shops and nails, high-end restaurants. Exactly what you think. Gas got up to basically $5 a gallon. If I went 3 miles down the road on Jefferson, which comes off of 90, that you
Mhm.
know I was paying 4.30. So we're talking a 70-cent difference. But even after, so that was on Jefferson. But then I went into the gas station and I said, they never, right by my house, they never dropped their prices. It stayed at like 4.89. Even when all around us is coming down. And I finally, it drove me nuts. I looked it up. I was like, this might be. So I looked it up and sure enough, around me, there was some gas stations that were sued. They were colluding. They just agreed, if you don't lower your price, I won't lower mine. We'll pay for, it's convenience. They basically, they said, we think we have the socioeconomic demographics to support it. I mean, it works because obviously, it is working. I won't get gas from there, but there is a little bit of collusion. It's conspiracy theorists. But then in New York State, we have excessive taxes, excessive fees. You look at like California. I mean, there they were hitting over 7. And the one thing that's really driving me nuts about this discussion is like Kathy Hochul here in New York keeps trying to blame Trump for our high energy costs. But natural gas is a state run. Like New York State controls through our climate policy, our natural gas, our hydro expenses, all that policy is state run. So, one of the things I think we have not been making a true distinction between energy costs. I think there are a lot of blue states, loving getting to throw Trump under the bus for they just say high energy costs, right? And I also think I just know gas stations, they sell they sell their gas based on the cost, their projected cost of their next tank, their next fill up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm no expert on how gas stations price anything, but it definitely, again, the relationship between what's been going on in the Strait of Hormuz and the price of oil and the price of natural gas. Yeah, it was a doomsday party when the war started, and it just never has materialized. And in layman's terms, I don't think the energy markets are as complex as analysts want you to think they are. The bottom line is that oil is flowing and the price of a barrel of oil is not and never has been since the war started extravagant. Higher than average, but not extravagant. It never got close to $200 in any market. I
And maybe
I
we need
find
to
it
cut out that rant of mine because I totally got distracted. But what I was going to say was that the fundamentals of oil, let me try to just like work back into this first. So, Richard, to answer your question, I think some of the underlying fundamentals of oil, the energy markets, the guys that every year, the energy traders every year, like that this is their job predict world energy markets, all of them were screaming, we do not want to be caught long oil. The supply of oil, this is at, you closing up 2025. The supply of oil has never been higher, while demand is actually going down because of like is here in the States, because of the affluence of natural gas too. Just how much natural gas. There are places in the United States that are still burning off natural gas because it's cheaper to burn it off than it is to transport it and sell it. So
so
the oil market there is not. And this is a temporary disruption.
okay. So you're saying that there's places in America that are producing natural gas and they
Yes,
just burn it off because it's
because there is so much. So you look at like a state like Pennsylvania, if Pennsylvania wasn't selling, so there's a lot of anti data center mentality in Pennsylvania. Governor Shapiro is so smart to be welcoming those data centers because Pennsylvania right now, they have so much natural gas production ability but the way their population is and kind of isolated, it wouldn't make sense for them to continue to produce natural gas at this level unless they were selling it. Like they provide New York State with New York State, Connecticut, some of their neighboring states with a significant amount of gas because it would be netting a loss if they were only selling it in the state of Pennsylvania. So anybody in Pennsylvania that looks at you and says, we can't, that these data centers are a bad thing, they don't understand the full game here. Because Pennsylvania, if the Pennsylvanians want to continue to get natural gas for cheap, they need to continue to produce at these rates. And if I wouldn't want to rely on New York State, because New York State's been proven to be quite unreliable. So I would let some of these data centers in they'll come in, they will pay for all the infrastructure, they'll contribute significantly to just the whole natural gas production infrastructure, they'll keep it maintained, and the citizens of Pennsylvania will continue to benefit from low energy costs.
We're just covering the whole gamut of everything, aren't we? So
Sorry, getting all over the place.
now we're getting into AI, so that's a whole other.
That is a whole other, but yeah,
Yeah.
there are places in the States where they are still burning natural gas off, yeah.
So, I guess, what do you think the Strait of Hormuz is going to look like in 10 years?
My goodness, wow. Huh, I don't know if I can speak specifically for the Strait of Hormuz, but can I speak for the Middle East?
Sure.
I think the Middle East is gonna look very different, and I think it's going to be countries like the UAE and I think it goes one of 2 ways. The Strait of Hormuz is completely irrelevant or it's vital, but it's vital because Iran doesn't control it, if that makes sense.
Well, I kinda think it'll be largely irrelevant. I think, if pipelines are utilized and more pipelines are built, then it's frankly, it's easier to just go to Oman and Saudi Arabia and not have to go all the way up into the Persian Gulf to get these products and extract them.
Yeah,
Not
like
to
if the
say.
an Oman partner
What's that?
if the UAE and Oman partner, right? Well, the UAE does control it's only Oman only controls the tip of that
Yeah,
peninsula.
I mean, I think that it'll be a very if Iran is no longer the authoritarian regime it is, then yeah, the Strait of Hormuz will be used as a transit point for energy, and the Persian Gulf will still be utilized, but not to the level it is now. I believe what pre-war something like 120, 130 ships transited the strait every day.
Think
It's certainly faster to go to the Omani coast or get your oil that way than to transit all the way up through the Strait of Hormuz, which is a congested shipping lane already, even under, peaceful conditions, and the Persian
think
Gulf is congested.
the container ships will still have to come up to provide supplies and goods,
Sure.
but those were included in that number you just gave, that 120, 130. So, those are ones like, their container ships delivering goods are gonna be completely cut out. So, when people quote these numbers, that's the other thing that's a little annoying sometimes. It's like 136 tankers full of oil. No, that's not true, right? Because they're not all oil tankers are going through there. I do see I mean, I would look at this experience and say the Middle East, it may be the best equipped to learn this lesson, but it's a lesson that's important to learn, meaning what's your backup plan, right? Always have a backup plan. Let's build it out. If we can't trust the Iranian, if we have kind of one commodity leading our economy, which is just further proof they need to diversify too, right? But beyond that, we need multiple options to deliver it.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating next year and how this all plays out.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see too. I'm on record on other shows as saying this will probably go at least to Labor Day. Think it might go further now. I'm not one to put timelines on these types of operations, but I'm curious. I'm very much of the belief that I don't think the president cares that much about the midterms. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I'd have to agree at this point, but frankly, I like that, right? I'd rather have a president concerned about doing the right thing for the country than winning midterms. It's just so frustrating to me that so many of our politicians are too focused on the next election or winning or their favorables. No, like but no, you should be concerned about the best interest of our country, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree, and I get the importance of Congress in some aspects, but Congress doesn't do
Yeah.
anything really that they're supposed to do, and feel with the Senate, it's all about the Supreme Court and nothing else, and the House doesn't really they can't pass a budget on time. They don't provide oversight really on anything, not in a meaningful way, and they haven't declared war since World War II, even though we've been in countless wars since the end of the Second World War. And I find it almost comical that we spend so much time in our culture and in media talking about Congress. Essentially an organization that does not do their fundamental job. Their fundamental job is boring. It's not sexy, and that's by design. Being in the legislature is not supposed to be exciting, and the amount of airtime they get and the amount of of money that is spent on their campaigns and their elections compared to the results that they deliver is just asinine to me.
It's comical. It's
Yeah,
disgusting.
it really is. And so we're in election season, and so I'm in Colorado, which is a blue state, and but we still get, we have two Democrats running in a primary for governor, so we get political ads. But when I am not in Colorado, for example, I was back. I grew up in Iowa. I was back home in Iowa not too long ago. Holy political ads! You get annoyed here with political ads, and you go to a state that really is not red or blue, and has a lot of contested campaigns, and it's nauseating, and you can't escape it anymore. You can't escape if you're watching a podcast on YouTube, you can't unless you pay to not have the ads, you can't escape the political ads on they're everywhere now. So,
My cousin lived in one of the undecided counties in Pennsylvania through the 2024 election season. He used to send us regular updates of the stacks of mail he got. And he would always be like, here's my, bonfire supplies. He finally put like this message. He's like, do to the post office, do not deliver any more, election mail. It's crazy.
yeah,
It's such
it
money.
it is, but again,
We'll just say really quick, he said, "Whoever I'm gonna vote for whoever doesn't send me mail."
well, that's yeah, I mean, I really think when it comes to campaigns and the differences in how the parties do stuff, I was fascinated by the podcast world in the 2024 presidential campaign, and how post-election the Democrats were on this tirade, if you will, about the need to get into the podcast space. And I'm someone that I would say 80% of the podcasts I listen to are sports related and or my hobbies. And I listen to Joe Rogan. I would say I listen to maybe one out of every 10 of his podcasts. I'm not a UFC guy, so I don't listen to any of that stuff. But Joe Rogan's podcast, anybody who listens to it at the frequency that I do, which is not that much, knows that he's not a conservative guy. He's not a political. Most of his podcasts, I would say almost half of are comedians and UFO
Yeah,
conspiracy guys. There's
like,
it's not
he's like Joe Rogan is like an alien guy.
Yeah, it's not that deep. I mean, it's entertaining. It's great to listen to when you're on a bike ride or going for a walk, or you're doing, I like to listen to Joe Rogan. I like to cook a lot, so Joe Rogan in the background when I'm doing food prep, meal prep, it's fun. But but in listening to some of the people in the Democratic Party talking about the need to get their own Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan, I'm like, you had Joe Rogan. He was a Bernie bro back in the day.
That's it. You guys had him. It
Yeah.
lost him.
Yeah.
And now some of these Republicans, I gotta be honest though, some of the Republicans going on the Joe Rogan, they're so stiff and they're uncomfortable, right? They don't know what to do. But you guys had everyone. They were yours to lose. And I think Joe Rogan, I think he spoke like Theo Vaughn. I think they just spoke for common sense in that 2024 election. And I think anybody that spoke for common sense in the 2024 election was immediately rewarded because at one point, I mean, I like there was that they them ad and Donald Trump just nailed that one out of
That
the
was
park.
a good ad.
It was and there was no response to that. And I'm like, if you're not for they them, tell us, right? Like prove to us. But and then clearly, Kamala went on the View and it was like, well, is there anything you do differently? Also, if she would have just said no, I don't think it would have got as much airtime. But she was like, well, not that I can think of. Like, if you're going to make word salad out of an answer that can't be word salad, my God. But
Well,
it was
I,
just,
my biggest problem with all of it is who are the Obama guys, the Pod Save Bros,
yeah, yeah, the pod saves America.
Pod Saves America. Yeah, I've seen enough clips of them and stuff, and they just lack so much authenticity. And I'm not saying that's not a thing on the conservative side, the Republican side of the podcast world or the media landscape. But when you come off to me as somebody who is repeating the talking points, that clearly there is some type of they all use the especially when it's really in the and you know hot and heavy during campaign season, they all use the same keywords on all the different networks. They make their rounds, the Sunday morning shows, they all make sure they hit their points. You know,
So
with podcasts, I think the one thing that really resonates, if you watch someone like Joe Rogan enough, when he just has like a couple comedians on and they're drinking beers and someone's smoking a joint and Joe Rogan's smoking a cigar, they have no idea where the conversation's going. They're laughing, they're shooting the breeze. Those are refreshing, and but they're also very authentic, and the very political podcasts on both sides don't come across that way.
yeah,
But with
the
the liberal media, you know, one thing I really wish would happen, the fact that so many people on the left could not acknowledge how horrible a candidate Kamala Harris was really makes it difficult to have any type of meaningful discourse moving forward, because I don't think it was that difficult to see how flawed she was. And I look at Kamala's campaign and how it was covered by the mainstream media a lot like a professional a city with professional sports teams. With take Philadelphia. You know, they have football, baseball, hockey, and basketball. And you have beat writers for all those teams, for all the local TV stations, the Philadelphia newspapers. If they sat there and tried to BS their readership about that the quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, you know, if Jalen Hurts, oh, he didn't have that bad a game and he threw 4 interceptions and they lost by 3 touchdowns, they wouldn't be a reporter for very long. People would call them on that. I would love for like a newspaper to take all their sports reporters one day and say, stop covering sports. You go over to the local government beat. You go to the state capitol and cover that crap. And all the political reporters go over to the football team, go over to the baseball team. You know, I'll use Philadelphia again. Like, hey, you know, Bill, you're no longer covering the state capitol, get over to you're going on a road trip with the Phillies,
yeah,
and because in sports journalism there's still a tremendous level of authenticity, because you can't BS the fan base, and because the
Bills
fans want to win.
Richard, I'm a Bills fan. I know. You can't BS us. And
Yeah,
how many times it's been tried. And I gotta say, speaking of inauthentic, have you been seeing this Scott Pelkey from
from
God,
60 Minutes.
I think he said getting fired or something was like, because obviously 60 Minutes is his family. First of all, he sees absolutely 0 bias, no bias. The only bias 60 Minutes ever had, according to this Scott guy, is when Barry Weiss came in.
Yeah.
He was on the scale, and then at one point, he's like, "This is my family. It's more painful than having your wife murdered." I'm like,
Yeah, it was so that
we're
was
thinking about your wife being like, what world are you living in? And then he's crying those crocodile tears, and I'm like, and then just to sit there and say 60 Minutes has never been biased, CBS has never been biased. Well, until Barry Weiss came.
yeah, and it's also there's such a there, you know, with Scott Pelley, and I can't remember the last time I
Yeah.
watched 60 Minutes from start to finish. It's been a long time. I thought after Obama took out Bin Laden, I thought that special they did on them was on Obama, interviewing Obama and everybody. It was all right, but to have that level of self importance, and I believe it was his Instagram post when he's on his sailboat slash yacht with the American flag behind him, thanking everyone for the support, and talking about being in combat. You know, I mean, yes, I'm not saying he didn't take risks getting shot at, but you're not in combat, because, you know, you're not shooting back and you could leave. You don't have to be there. You know, you're not the same as you know, whatever unit he was attached to. I don't know if it was a Marine Corps unit or an Army unit, but you're not a soldier. You if you wanted to walk away, you could have. So he's everything that's wrong with the political class in America and the corporate journalism. The idea that 60 Minutes is somehow the standard bearer of journalism in America is just ridiculous. And not many people on even on the left, because it's obviously a left leaning show, I don't know many liberals that actually really believe that. They might say the right thing to not upset their friends in public or on social media, but they don't really believe it. And 60 Minutes is not that great of a show.
Well, the
It enjoyed a tremendous advantage and still does. It has the NFL lead into it. Its season
yeah,
starts in September and it gets that 425, 405 kickoff on CBS in huge media markets, and people leave their TVs on. It goes from the game. There's 2 minutes in the NFL's the CBS studio in New York post game, and then it goes straight into 60 Minutes.
and the other thing Scott Pelley or Pelkey, whatever it is,
Really
not even that important, is like, yeah, he did oversee a steady decline in viewership. And it's like, you're getting on here. My first thought when he's talking about combat was stolen valor. I'm not, I'm not, like I said, I never served or anything, but I'm like, how dare you equate to like that just really upset me just to hear.
great. It's not the appropriate language to be using.
Especially now because we do have troops that are under threat, right? That are risking their lives. We've lost some recently. And then that shot to him on his yacht, just with the American flag. Suddenly he's a patriot? Like, what?
Yeah, you know, I would also say, I was looking up his name, Benjamin Hall, the Fox News correspondent who was severely wounded in Ukraine. His cameraman was killed. His translator was killed. He's an impressive person, but he's, certainly suffered he's a casualty of war, and I don't believe he's ever
No.
referred to himself as a somebody who's been in combat. You know, that's a term that should be reserved for people in uniform.
And then he
And
said to Trump, "Unless I'm wrong, I don't think the president's ever been in combat." Like, he tried to equate himself as he was. I just I got I did I just didn't pay much attention to him at all. I didn't really know who he was at all until this came out, but then he made those comments, and he really irritated me. It was like, "No, we do have troops abroad. We have troops that are risking their lives." And, like, to your point, I think, like, to your point, that the in Ukraine, those journalists, photojournalists, the cameramen that were there, they did suffer, but, I just I was so irritated, and but you know what it is? It's that inauthenticity. It's so fake, it's so not real, and you know what it struck me? It was like pure DC politics, and that's just what I can't stand, and the career politicians, and they come on both sides. I mean, then it's the swamp, right? That's what your average American doesn't, in my opinion, can't stand, right? The people that are there to better themselves. I mean, and then you move on to, like, I saw Jasmine Crockett got on her podcast. It's something with Crockett. I didn't even know she had one, but she was talking about how, there's a big murder case or a trial in Texas. This I believe he was a junior or senior in high school. Austin
oh yeah, the
Eckler.
Carmelo Anthony case.
I would prefer not to use his name because I don't want the world to remember his name. I prefer we remember Austin's name, right? He's the one who we lost. I don't say that
Fair
just
point.
yeah, but it was his murder trial. It was the murderer of Austin Mack at this trial. And the tribalism that we saw, and just this idea that Jasmine Crockett getting on there saying that this mother that lost her son to needlessly lost her son, that the experience of I believe it was Black mothers, I don't even know who it was exactly, that but that couldn't relate to the experience that this mother who just lost her son. I thought, how disrespectful for our national politician to get on stage and disrespect this mother that just had her son needlessly murdered, right? I like what are you so do you have so much free time in Washington that this is what you can do?
Well, I mean, I look at it's really unfortunate, particularly the House of Representatives, because you have people on both sides of the aisle who are, I would call them blowhards. The Squad, Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Mace in South Carolina. There's plenty to go around on both sides of the aisle, and they they suck up so much of the space, and they get so much attention for not doing really anything except talking a lot and being on social media and making headlines for talking. And there's a lot of members of Congress who are trying to do a good job. Congressman Lawler from New York is one that comes to mind. I used to Ro Khanna's, he stepped out a little bit recently, but they get time. But I think that they're rational people who listen. I don't agree with them completely, but that's okay. There's plenty of caucuses in Congress where people are trying to get some things done, and but the extremists on both sides really sully the good work that some people in Congress are trying to do. I'm by a very outspoken critic of Congress, both
Yeah.
houses, and I'll never stop being that because they're elected representatives and they deserve to be critiqued and analyzed every waking second. That's what you sign up for when you do those when you run for office. But I really think that
My personal
part of
pre
the problem, part of the problem I think is that you attract these types of people, like the people in the squad, Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene. You attract these type of people because I think really competent, smart people, they're too they have too much to lose, and they have too much common sense to put up with the crap of being in Congress. And, there's a lot of incentives, the lifetime pension, the healthcare is great. I don't forget how many years you have to serve before you get your lifetime pension, but it's not a lot. And, you know, I I wonder if, you can never change those rules because that would require Congress, you know, Congress has never voted down a pay raise for themselves. But we public office in America does not incentivize smart, successful people who are ambitious and want to make things happen for the better of everybody. It doesn't incentivize them to run for public office.
We don't have public servants anymore. And that's one thing our founding fathers warned against was a professional political class. They said, you be in big trouble if you ever get to a world where there's a professional political class. I know here my representative, Joe Morelli, he was convicted of election fraud early in his career. He's been I think he's been the Rochester, New York representative for I don't even know how many years. But I've tried to get through to him. Like, I actually got a response, believe it or not, gonna say this. I got a response from Chuck Schumer's office, and he's the whole state before I got a response from Morelli's office, and Morelli only represents and it was an education-related matter that I am still very passionate about because I believe we will continue to elect these fools unless we start to better educate our children. But, Joe Morelli, just anything. It's like if it's not in his narrative, he claims to have office hours locally, except for I went a couple times. It was a bill. It was about numeracy in New York State and a new bill they were passing. And I could not find a way to connect. And I thought, my God, like if we can't connect over education, right? At least I got a response from Schumer's office. It was canned. He didn't do
Sure.
much.
Well, and
He
it's also a lot of people, they hate Congress and they love their congressperson.
That's 100% it, right?
Yeah, I mean, not
Now
everybody, but a lot of people feel that way.
well, and I had nothing to offer Morelli, right? I gave him no benefit.
Yeah,
And so, I had nothing to offer him, but I do have I actually feel like I do because, I've been a teacher in front of a classroom. I've worked at school, I've run the office, and I know what these kids need. And so in my opinion, of course, everyone probably thinks they have something to offer. I was just only asking something very simple. Just it was very specific to, a bill. And I guess I'm the fool because I expect we should teach our children to read, write, and do arithmetic.
well, and again, I grew up in Iowa and we had, I mean, Chuck Grassley is still the senator from Iowa. I think he's 92, 93 years old. But I
Yes.
grew up with Senator Harkin was the Democrat, Tom Harkin, and Chuck Grassley was a Republican. And pretty much everyone I knew that was an adult, they voted for both of them because they delivered the goods for the state of Iowa. And people were like, "I'm a Democrat, but I vote for Grassley, and I'm a Republican, and I vote for Harkin." And again, to my point, a lot of people they love their congressperson and or their senator. And
But hate
uh,
Con
what's that?
but hate Congress.
But they hate Congress, and
Such a
uh,
that
it,
nails it. It's perfect.
Yep. And it's been true for and it will continue to be true. I'm really, really, I think Congress right now, it's so broken. I don't know how to fix it. And the problem is if you were going to fix it, the mechanism to fix it is is the broke entity, which is Congress.
When like, we're asking an organization to fix themselves, but
Yeah.
if to fix themselves, yeah, which seems almost, almost impossible. But that goes back to the original purpose of the Senate. The original intention of the Senate is not what it is today, right? The Senate was supposed to be chosen, and the Senate was to represent states' rights at the federal government level, and was supposed to be chosen by the states themselves. But, that changed with the progressive era, among other things.
Yeah. And I think Congress has nobody to blame but themselves for the situation they're in. They've abdicated so much authority and
They are
which
to do their job because
well, yeah, as Congress has abdicated their responsibilities, the Supreme Court has become more controversial because a lot of the matters that the Supreme Court refuses to address are
Congress.
essentially Congress's problem, not the Supreme Court's.
The same thing goes with the executive branch. The executive branch is weighing in on immigration is a great example, right? Congress refuses to pass proper immigration legislation. So presidents come in and depending on what they're aligned with, like look at all Trump's executive orders surrounding immigration. Right. What does irritate me, and we don't have to get too deep into immigration tonight, but what does irritate me is how many times did we hear this idea that the border is closed. It's not open under Biden, right? It was like we're looking at these people like it's like, what is that phrase about like whatever, it's like gaslighting. Sorry, I can't recall it at the moment, but no, the border is secure. The border is secure. All these lies. Then suddenly when it mattered for the election, suddenly Biden started to enforce some of those rules because it's not when they become executive orders, it's about the ability to enforce them. If it's only the executive branch that can or will enforce them, or like sanctions against Iran. We were not really enforcing them largely under the Biden administration. So Iran was getting away with a lot. And we can't, if we are going to have government by executive branch, we also need to prepare ourselves for government that is changing every 4 years. And that is not good for our citizenship.
No, it isn't, and it's really unfortunate that Congress is weaponizing the power of the purse, what they've done with DHS and just closing the government as much as they do, shutting the government down. It's again, being in a legislature, whether it's the US Congress or a state, it's not glamorous, sexy work. It's not supposed to be. Oversight, funding, passing a budget, those are tedious processes, but they're important processes. And when you don't do them on time or don't do them in an aggressive manner, then you're always playing catch up, and that's part of the issue, a huge issue with Congress. And, it's not all Congress's fault. The executive branch has their problems too, but yeah, I I don't see a bright future for Congress changing anytime soon. I feel bad for the Supreme Court because if if you're really a student of the court, which I am not, but I enjoy like Jonathan Turley, professor at George Washington Law School, and he's an interesting follow on social media, and he writes on a regular basis. He's a constitutional law professor. When you really look at a lot of the Supreme Court's rulings, they rule on fairly benign, boring issues, boring cases. And a lot of times, they rule 9-0.
Yeah.
So they're
Yeah.
not as political of a body as a lot of people would make them out to be.
Oh, there are certain justices that I think have become more political. I guess I watched Clarence Thomas' speech he delivered. He was somebody that used to be very much behind the scenes, and he delivered. I'm paraphrasing, and I hope I can deliver his message correctly. But it was basically like academic degrees and awards don't mean anything in the court, right? Like you come here, it's your decisions, your your ability to decipher that really matter. And and he gave this speech. It was in Texas. And again, one of the things I've recently learned about him too was historically he has not spoken much. He's been reticent, hesitant to speak because he was mocked. I watched the PBS Frontline documentary. He was mocked for the way he spoke, that he was mocked by his own community. And he largely wouldn't speak publicly just because of his tone and whatnot. And it was very much a shaping, it very much shaped his public persona based on the response he got largely from his own community. So to hear him speaking now, I mean, the man is full of a lot of wisdom. Anybody that's been on the court that long, again, doesn't matter what side, if you've been through as much and seen as much as he's seen, there's so much wisdom there, right? He's been through how presidents.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was for many, many years, he was famous for he never asked a question
Yeah.
during proceedings at all. He was silent. He just listened, and you know, I yeah, and I think Justice Scalia, Justice Ginsburg, they were very close. They were the best of friends in many, many ways.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that I wish we would have paid more attention to about what brings us together more than what sets us apart. And that obviously Justice Scalia and Justice Ginsburg were on different sides of the political spectrum, but they were both, my understanding at least, I'm not a lawyer and not a legal expert, but widely regarded as brilliant. Both of them were widely regarded as brilliant legal minds and respected for that. And I wish that that is something that we could embrace and focus on and maybe highlight more moving forward than we do now. It's just so easy to get to go into each other into the corners and come out with your
It,
fists up and ready to go. I look back to like President Reagan and Tip O'Neill and how they worked together as another great example. Senator, Ted Kennedy worked very closely with John McCain. Again, just some examples where in the in the not so distant past, where there was bipartisanship and civility from people who were on different sides of the aisle.
So glad you said that, and hopefully that's one thing we can bring to our audience is focus on what brings us together, not what divides us, because in America today, it is so easy to s we are so divided. I just take this last murder trial in Texas. I mean, at the end of the day, 2 young boys both lost their lives, their futures. But one will never come I mean, one is still here, but what a sad state of affairs because nobody wins in cases like that. And to hear our elected officials get on and make this about race, it's so disappointing. But to your point, like Scalia and Ginsburg, and just they were aware, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, so blatantly said made it very clear that Roe v. Wade, while she agreed with the outcome, it was on a shaky. It was not based on good law. Like she could pick it apart. So she understood that and she would say that because she just was, it was more about honesty and reality. And hopefully that's one thing we can do, in our podcast, because I think, like Richard mentioned in the beginning, we are both independents, but what we want is the best future for America. And let's focus more on how we can work together and less on what divides us and more on what unites us. And seems like there are people who don't want to do that, and that's okay. We'll call them out, right? Because I feel like we almost need to. But, we want people here who are more interested in what unites us and what provides the best future. And not just for us, like, but America has always promised a better future for our future generations, right? Parents have children because and with the assumption in this book, true fundamental belief, I want a better world for my child. I am sometimes a little concerned about my future versus my son's future. And I hope that that's something that, with enough awareness and enough working together, we could possibly make a dent in.
I certainly hope so. It's going to be a fun journey.
Ambitious as that may be, I recognize.
Hey, you know, you got to start somewhere, right? And I'm excited for this show and getting our inaugural episode in the books. So we're going to be recording on Wednesdays, and this podcast will be put out on YouTube on Thursday mornings.
And we want to hear from you guys too, right?
Yeah, we look forward to any comments. Don't forget to like the video and hit subscribe to our channel. And we welcome all input, anything you want us to talk about. All those things are welcome.
Yeah, so we want to hear what you want us to talk about. If there's a story, please tell us what you liked, what you didn't like. Richard and I met each other actually on Two Way, which is a platform to bring people together that are interested in politics. And we kind of clicked because well, we're less a little interested in politics and we're more interested in on all the good things that America has going. Like we're not neither of us are very political. We're both independent and we like America.
Yep. There's no team sports here. We will call out both political parties and we won't always agree either. Despite how this show went, we have a loose format, but we let the conversation flow and it takes us where it takes us. So hope you enjoyed our first episode, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
Absolutely.